Hello, everyone. Good morning. And in this monologue, I'd like to talk about flat pricing versus time and material. So I am in the trades, which includes electric, plumbing, other construction trades. I'm sorry, construction trade. And I'm specifically referring to those professions, the construction trades. But there are many other professions as well that are driven by this debate of whether people should be charged by flat pricing or time. In certain cases, there's no material. Like for example, if you're hiring a lawyer, they're not going to charge you time and material, but they will charge you time. So this debate actually um, covers other industries as well. But it is most prevalent in the construction trade. So let's talk about the construction trades as to which one is preferred. And first, we're going to talk about what the terms actually mean and how they came about. So, historically, and by historically, I'll go back to 50 plus years. Okay, if you lived in a small town 50 years ago and you wanted to hire a doctor, right? Typically, there was some type of doctor that lived in town and they came over to your house. When you had an issue, you called them. There was no telephone. Oh, let's go back to more than 50 years. Okay, you just knocked on their door. They came over, and they used to bring a kit with them. Anyway, the details don't matter. Bottom line is they came over, they did their thing, and after they're done, they charge you. Did you know in advance how much the doctor was going to charge you? No. With a lawyer, same thing. Historically speaking, if you hired a lawyer for whatever reason, you knock on their door, you say, "Hey, I have a legal need for doing whatever." The lawyer does it for you, and then they charge you whatever their fee is. So the client slash customer slash patron does not know in advance how much they will be charged. Why? And isn't that an invalid form of taking on an obligation? Like, because there's no contract, right? Can it be enforced in a court? And the answer is yes, it can be enforced in a court. I'll tell you in a moment why. But the reason why it's done this way is that the scope of the actual work is not known in advance. So, going back to the medical field, right? If the doctor comes and examines you, if you go to a doctor's office and the doctor examines you, either way, they don't know. Sorry, you don't know. They don't know either. Neither party knows what exactly is going to be involved here. We don't have a diagnosis even. So we don't know what the problem is. In fact, the diagnostic process itself is also costly. And that also has to be paid for. So you have to pay for the diagnostic process itself, which is the scope of which is not known in advance. And then the curing process also you got to pay for, which is not known. So overall, it's just wide open. It could be small, it could be little, it could be big, it could be somewhere in the middle, or it could be a $5,000 visit, right? Not a single visit, but it could be a $5,000 process to get you cured of whatever illness you have. And the same thing goes with the law. So this is historically why there is no price in advance. Now you're asking me why it's illegal, and the answer is there is a legal. I forgot the exact wording of the term, but the concept is you're not allowed to enrich yourself off someone else's work. So if somebody walks in, so now we're going to go back to the construction trades. So you hire someone. No, I'm sorry, scrap that. You ask someone. You ask your neighbor, anyone. Hey, I have a leaky faucet. Can you please come over and fix it? And the guy says, sure, not a problem. Comes over and he fixes it. And after he's done, he says, okay, can you give me $50? I mean, I fixed your faucet. Give me $50, please. And you said, heck no. I never stipulated that I'm going to pay you for this. And the guy said, yeah, but I mean, you took my time. It took me an hour to do this. And I actually used certain materials, right? And what, are you not going to pay me for this? And the guy says, heck no. I never said. I thought you were doing it for me as a favor. And the answer is they have to pay. Why? Because you benefited from this. This person spent time and material, but it really doesn't matter. The material aspect doesn't really matter. The point is they expended a certain effort in this process of helping you, and you're trying to enrich yourself being helped without paying for it. Illegal. So that's a tort. you can sue for that in a court, and a reasonable judge would grant reasonable compensation for your work. So you can't charge $1 million, but you could charge a reasonable amount for your effort and for the material that you used. So the law supports the concept that a person can provide a service without stipulating a price in advance, and then bill that client for the service after the fact based on reasonable rates and a reasonable formula. So this is historically how it is. Now, how does flat pricing come about and why? And the reason it came about is that, as you can see from the way I'm describing the time and material process, people are not happy. Like, why, what am I getting myself into here? Do I even have the pocketbooks to take on such an adventure, right? So you're walking into a doctor, you're hiring a lawyer, like, I have no idea how much is going to be involved here. So it's extremely tempting to know, especially for a person of limited means, for them to know how much am I obligating myself to pay here, right? How much? Give me at least a range, give me an estimate, but preferably give me a fixed number so that I can budget accordingly and know how much I'm going to be obligated to pay. And most importantly, I want to know that I'm not going to pay more than a certain number. Okay, but yeah, basically, give me the price in advance is what the customer wants to know. And so this is how flat pricing came about. Now, how does flat pricing work? And this is the important thing. This is where the crux of this issue is going to be pivoting on. So the flat pricing works is by let's take the legal industry. Okay, so if you walk into, let's say you have a DUI charge, you're walking into a lawyer's office and, hey, represent me, help me. Now, what is involved in the legal process here, right? You got to file briefs with the court. You got to show up to hearings, right? You got to have conferences with the client to discuss things, to discuss strategy, and to interview them, etc. You got to collect evidence. You got to draft certain documents. It's a big process. Now, in the lawyer's mind, if the client asks, how much is this going to cost me? Like, if they don't ask, it's simple. They have a certain formula, whatever it is. After the fact, you bill them. This is how many hours I did. This is how many documents I drafted, blah, blah, blah. This is how many sessions I spent in court, and they bill them accordingly. But if the client asks how much is it going to cost me, then the lawyer has to start thinking here. He's got to crunch some numbers here. Okay, let's come up with a range. Okay, if it's the easiest possible case, like, again, the lawyer knows nothing about the case as of yet, right? So if it's the easiest possible case to get resolved and to see through the legal process, then it's going to cost about, let's say, $3,000. Okay, maybe let's say even less, $2,000. The absolute best case scenario. If it's the worst case scenario, it's a aggravated crime. The prosecution is stubborn. A lot of documents to gather. Blah blah blah. Then it's $18,000. Okay, so we're dealing here with a range of $3,000 to $18,000. In the lawyer's mind, he hasn't said nothing to the client yet. In his mind, he's thinking, okay, it's either 3 or 18. Now, what flat rate should I give the client? Now, note that once I start interviewing you and try to pull out some obtain information that would shed light as to narrow down this range, right? I'm already expending effort into this, and I gotta charge you for that as well, right? Before I even give you the price, I gotta take that process itself into account in determining the actual price. So let's ignore that for now. So let's assume that the lawyer knows nothing about the client, and still they have to give them a price in advance. So what would you tell them? What price would you agree to take this on, knowing that the range of the theoretical price is between $2,000 and $18,000? And so some people might say, okay, let's average it out. Let's do an actuarial table and blah, 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 and crunch all the numbers as to what the likelihood is that it's going to be a theoretical $6,000 job or a $12,000 job, et cetera, and then come up with some type of average. But this is not the correct answer, because this would require significant computational power, which is beyond the expertise of the average person, obviously. But also, why should I even want to do that? Why should I even want to assume risk in any transaction? Um, that's not my job. I'm not an insurance company. Okay? So if you're going to force me, I'm the lawyer right here, right? If you're going to force me to assume risk, I'm not going to do it for just the average. So there's no question that any time that there's flat pricing involved, meaning that the professional is giving a price upfront, a binding price upfront to the client slash customer, they are padding the bill. And I'm not using this as a pejorative term. They must do so, because if not, it's not worth it for them. You're forcing me to be an insurance company. You're forcing me to insure you against the possibility of some type of thing causing this case to blow up and be super expensive, right? And I can't charge you more if that happens, right? You're insured, right? So why should I do that for free? I'm not going to do that for free. My primary mission is my trade. My primary expertise is in my field, in my profession, not in the insurance field. So if you're forcing me to take on that risk and give you a price in advance, I'm definitely going to charge you extra for that. So that's the first thing to understand about flat pricing. So you're asking why, why would people want to do that if they're paying extra? And the answer is because they want to know the price in advance, right? So that knowledge and that commitment to a particular price in advance costs money. It costs money. There are many consumers that are willing to pay that premium in advance. In other words, they're willing to purchase a two-faceted product. One is the service, the actual professional service, and the second is the insurance aspect of the service, knowing that it's not going to cost more than a certain number. So there are many customers that are willing to purchase that. But what I'm here to tell you right now is that this service and this knowledge comes at a cost. That's the most important thing to understand. So again, historically speaking, people didn't want this, or the industry wasn't geared to operate on such a basis, and everything was time and material. Nowadays, a lot of the cost that people pay for all of these services, but I'm particularly focusing on the construction trade, when a person gives you a price in advance, a lot of the cost, a big portion of the cost that you're paying is not for the actual service, but for the insurance that it's not going to cost more than a certain number. So the contractor is going to give you a price in advance at a cost, at a price. I'm going to add to it because I am taking on that risk of complication. Another benefit for the contractor, and this was a benefit that, this wasn't what triggered the adoption of flat pricing, but it's a benefit that did in fact materialize, and that is that I don't have to actually expose the basis for my pricing. So if you are, let's say, a lawyer, everyone knows that lawyer fees are pretty high, right? You don't have to tell the customer that you're charging $200, $300 an hour, right? So instead of telling them that, you're telling them, okay, this is how much I'm charging you to see through the case. I'm charging you a flat price. And the other aspect of this is that
I want to see.
No, you cannot see. The other aspect of this is that you can actually sell the customer the completed service rather than the process of the service, right? So let's go back to the construction profession. So let's say you are having AC problems, okay? So you're calling a contractor, the HVAC contractor. He comes over and he tells you, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you a brand new system. It's going to have a 6-year warranty. Within 90 days, everything is covered. Even labor is covered. I'm going to make sure that the ducts are clean. I'm going to blah, 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 blah. They sell them all the package and experience. White glove experience. We're going to have professions. We're top rated, etc., etc. And you have nothing to worry about. This is the price you're paying. We're not going to charge you a dime extra. The customer is wooed by this completed package. And there are people who like that. And knowing that you're not paying a dime more, knowing that in advance. And this is something that they're willing to pay a flat price without understanding that the price should have been lower. Why? Because they are being tricked, in a sense. I'll go back to this in a moment. But they're being tricked into thinking that they're not purchasing the process, but they're purchasing the completed product. Now, why is that not true? Because if you look at the actual numbers, in certain cases, many of those contractors who charge flat pricing, right, and they give you a price in advance for a complete system, etc., the prices are not justified. They're a little high. They're higher than they should be. So, case in point, I just read online of a lady that was charged $1,000 to replace a toilet. Now, that's high. That's very high, even on a flat pricing basis. So, even on the basis of the possibility that things are going to get complicated, giving someone a price in advance that's going to cost $1,000, I'm going to take $1,000 to replace a toilet. It's typically an hour of labor. So it costs you a trip fee, the truck, the insurance, the maintenance, the labor. It still doesn't amount to $1,000, right? So a lot of times, if this were transformed into a formula, then it would be difficult to justify. Like, even if the hour, like, no one has an hourly rate in plumbing that is more than, I don't know, $300-$400, right? So how did you get to 1,000, right? So it's difficult to justify this. But under flat pricing, you can kind of fudge the numbers a little, because you can say, oh, the job is rated as a 2-hour job, and we're charging $400 an hour. We're flat price. For the most part, they're never even going to say this, what I'm saying right now. But what they're simply going to tell the customer is, no, we don't charge hourly. We charge flat pricing, which is a total lie, because the flat pricing is based on a hourly computation. Of course it is, right? But they're going to tell the customer, no, we charge you to get the job done. Goes back to what I said earlier. They try to present it as a package, as a completed product rather than a process. But it's a lie, because that's not true. The real flat pricing basis is, in fact, driven by how long is the job actually going to take. Okay, so this is what I told you earlier. It's really a trick. They trick you into telling you, hey, we're selling you a package service. But it's not true, because what they're really selling is their labor. What they're really selling is the cost of bringing a van/truck over to their house. What they're really selling is, passing on the cost of doing business plus a reasonable profit, but not $1,000 to install a toilet, right? So the only way that they can charge $1,000 to install a toilet is by, and I'm giving you that as an example, but obviously when it comes to installing an AC, a completely new AC unit, it's a lot bigger of a job, and it's a lot easier to rip off the customer, quote unquote. Okay, I put it in quotes because it's not always evident that it's a ripoff. It's subjective in a lot of cases whether it's a ripoff or not. But if you're installing let's say a 2-ton system, I don't know how this sizing works, but whatever it is, if that system itself costs, let's say, $2,000, and you as an HVAC contractor, you're purchasing that system, you're installing it in a customer's house, you're charging them $10,000. Took you 1 day of work. 1 day. How did you go from $2,000 to $10,000 for 1 day of work? So as you can see, it's not very justified. So no matter what you tell the customer, it's not justified from a truly competitive standpoint and from a truly fair pricing standpoint. Of course, it's legal. You can charge whatever you want, right? But it's just not right. And it's not right if the markets were operated fairly, and if there was fair pricing and etc., then this wouldn't happen. And it's a ripoff, So, moral of the story is, to summarize, as you can see, I am not a fan of flat pricing. I don't think it is fair for the consumer. And if you are a consumer and you are listening to this monologue, understand that there is a cost to that information. It's not free. And at the same time, if you can trust, this is an important thing, but if you are able to develop a trusting relationship with a contractor, then you are actually better off not asking for pricing in advance. This is a very important thing. I think many consumers don't understand this. They don't appreciate this fact. I'm telling you this because I'm a plumbing contractor, and I know that my customers, my preferred customers, and the customers who get a better deal from me, both of these, right? I prefer them, and they're getting better value than me. These are customers who don't ask for pricing. They pay the bill. This eliminates the overhead of me having to haggle over the price, justify the price, discuss the price. I don't want to do that. I want to do plumbing, right? After the job is done, I write up I compute how long it took me, etc., etc. I have a formula. I compute it. I send them the invoice, and they pay. If you can trust that I didn't rip you off, that I gave you a fair price, I'm doing it consistently. I'm doing it on a cost plus basis, meaning that I just compute what my costs are, and I add a certain fair margin as a profit slash compensation. If you can trust that I'm doing this fairly, then this trust actually will save you money and will make my job easier, so I don't have to charge you extra for flat pricing. So this is something that I want consumers to understand if you are watching this video. Now, this does not mean, here's the important thing, and I'm going to conclude this monologue with this statement. This does not necessarily mean that the contractor cannot somehow give you some idea of pricing. Now, yeah. So, I mean, the truth of the matter is, at any time that you ask a contractor any question regarding price, it's already opening a can of worms, right? The best thing is to just not bring up the price at all. But you can actually get pricing information without flat pricing, quote unquote, right? So flat pricing by definition is contractually determined in advance. So the contractor is obligating himself to get the job done without charging you more. And that comes at a significant cost, as we have described earlier. But if as a contractor, if I am to give you a price, a range in advance, an estimate in advance, I'm like, well, it's going to cost blah, blah, blah. And you understand that it's just an estimate, it's just a range, it's just for informational purposes, and you're not putting any pressure on me at all to actually conform to that number, then I have no problem giving you some type of guideline for how my pricing is going to be, etc. And so yeah. So I personally, I don't call it flat pricing, but I call it listed, the published price or the list price. So I have list prices for typically performed plumbing tasks, and those list prices are based on a certain assumption of how work conditions are going to be. And if it turns out that the customer's work conditions conform to that model pricing, right, to the list price, then I will actually honor that list price. And so, and the other major advantage of having this list price is that it's actually published. It's published online on my website, and you don't even have to pick up the phone. You can just go to the website, and you get a very good idea of not just pricing for that particular task that is on the list, but you also get a good idea of how much I charge in general, right? How is this plumber's pricing compare to other plumbing companies? How do they charge? They charge a lot, little, somewhere in the middle, right? And once again, this is very valuable information for a customer that I think a customer deserves to know in advance, right? You deserve to know: are you hiring someone premium, the top of the market, like in terms of pricing, someone below, or someone in the middle? And there's no rating system currently in place. Like Google is not going to tell you if it's pricey or not. Like Yelp has that, but it's probably useless. That I know Yelp has those dollar symbols next to a restaurant, right? They tell you. But yeah, it's not something that is usually revealed or known to consumers in any other trade. And so by publishing the pricing, the list prices. So again, these are not contractually obligated in any form or in any particular job. but they are helpful to a consumer in terms of knowing, sizing up the contractor, how much they generally charge, and how much is likely to be my charge if I am to do whatever. And they don't even have to understand what that whatever is. Exactly. You want to say hi?
Yeah.
Say hi.
Hi.
Okay. Now I'm done with the video. So now you.
You could do.
Okay. Now you can say bye. Say bye.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks for watching.